These are the most interesting vintage photographs and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Soviet soldiers are distributing food to German prisoners of war gathered in a field somewhere on the Eastern Front. Despite the fierce war, the photo shows order, hunger, and discipline. The prisoners greedily reach for their rations, hoping for a bit of humanity. Around 1944. The photo shows a purse of coins pierced by a bullet. The soldier kept them in his breast pocket, and they were the ones who took the hit. There are signs of deformation. The bullet went through several coins, but stopped without hitting the heart. Next to it is his portrait and a diary with the inscription 1918, the last year of the First World War. The first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, pictured immediately after landing. Tired, dusty, but beaming with a smile, he is greeted by the military and local residents. He had just circled the Earth, not knowing if he would survive. A historical moment that marked the beginning of a new era. April 12, 1961. A rusty iron object with teeth and a ring is an ancient Roman door key used in the Bronze and Iron Ages. Such a mechanism not only opened locks, but could also perform a locking function through a massive clamp. The product is unique, with signs of hand-forged. I3 century AD. A bridge in India built across a dried-up riverbed seems absurd, but at the time of design, the water was passing through here. The river changed its course, leaving the modern structure in the desert. The photo has become a symbol of engineering's impotence over nature. During the 1976 elections, activist Ben Mazel entered the voting booth and publicly lit a cigarette in protest against the laws on prohibited substances. He relied on a legal loophole prohibiting the arrest of a voter during the voting process. The photo became a symbol of civil disobedience of that era. In 1999, a mass wedding was held in Amman with the participation of 48 couples, organized with the support of the Jordanian authorities. The initiative was aimed at reducing the costs of newlyweds and supporting low-income families. A young Muhammad Ali sits on a camel at the foot of the Giza pyramids, raising his fist in a black power gesture. He arrived in Egypt after refusing to participate in the Vietnam War, becoming a symbol of resistance and freedom. There is a sphinx in the background, as if watching a new hero of the time. In 1903, Benito Mussolini was arrested in Switzerland and filed in a police file with personal data and fingerprints. The document contains a full-face photo and profile, as well as information about appearance, height, and date of detention. The Mycenaean Bridge in Greece was built around 1300 BC and is still suitable for automobile passage. Its construction is based on Cyclopean masonry without mortar. It is one of the oldest active bridges in the world. Actor Yul Brynner was photographed in a convertible against the background of the poster of the film The Ten Commandments, in which he played the role of Pharaoh Ramses. The picture was taken on the day of the premiere of the painting. The car and the poster were used in the advertising campaign. On March 8, 1979, a mass protest was held in Tehran against the introduction of the compulsory wearing of the hijab. The rally was attended by thousands of women who opposed the new rules of the Islamic Republic. A few days later, the demonstrations were suppressed. A comparative photo shows the same area of Dubai in 1985 and 2016. In the first part, there is a desert and several buildings, including a Toyota store. The second one has dense buildings and modern skyscrapers. In 2014, archaeologists in the Chinese city of Luoyang discovered a burial site with a wooden chariot and the remains of 4 horses. The complex dates back to the Zhou dynasty and dates back to about the 8th century BC. A museum employee moistens the surface with a brush. Artist Marc Monnier works on a landscape against the backdrop of burning oil wells in Kuwait. The picture was taken in October 1991 after the end of the Gulf War. The fires were caused by arson attacks by Iraqi forces during their retreat. A dog in the snow captures the moment of the retreat of Italian troops near Stalingrad in December 1942. A military convoy is moving through a snowy plain in conditions of severe frost. The photo was distributed in the European press as a symbol of defeat. Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer at a meeting at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton in 1947. Both scientists were associated with the Manhattan Project, but held opposing positions on the issue of the use of nuclear weapons. The photo was taken after the Second World War. A comparison of images of Manhattan in 1609 and 2021 shows a change in the landscape, from dense forests to dense urban areas. The upper image is a reconstruction based on historical maps. The lower one is a modern satellite photo. Both images are oriented along the southern tip of the island. A Polish border guard and his service horse drink water from a stream in Bieszczady at the same time. The picture was taken in 1980 near the border between Poland and the USSR. The uniform of the border guard has standard issue weapons and equipment of the time. The photograph of a Japanese samurai in full armour dates back to the 1870s. This period occurred in the last years of the samurai class's existence before its official abolition. A military flag with the symbols of Japan is placed behind the back. Military personnel in protective suits work at an oil field engulfed in flames. The picture was taken during the aftermath of the arson attacks in Kuwait in 1991. The fire and oil spread over dozens of square kilometres. Reconstruction of the appearance of an ancient man from Cheddar, about 9,000 years ago, and his modern relative living in the UK. Their DNA matches the mitochondrial profile, which confirms the continuity of the lines. Photo of a snow battle in Lyon, France, 1896. This is one of the first dynamic action street shots captured using the latest movie cameras at that time. A French legionnaire holds a white dog named Fritz, which has been the battalion's mascot since 1940. The dog was officially enlisted in the unit, and he accompanied soldiers on campaigns in North Africa. The ruins of the ancient Roman city of Timgad in Algeria, founded by Emperor Trajan around 100 AD. The city was built according to a strict Roman grid, with straight streets intersecting at right angles. The preserved buildings of the Forum, Baths, Theatre, and the Triumphal Arch, which served as the main gate, are visible. Timgad was an administrative and military centre, and after the fall of Rome, it gradually disappeared under the sands of the Sahara. A camouflaged observation post in the form of a tree, created by British troops during the First World War. Such structures were installed at night on the front line and used for covert surveillance of the enemy. A man rescues a pack of diapers in front of a burning building during riots in Los Angeles, 1992. This is one of the symbolic shots of the events that broke out after the acquittal of the police officers who beat Rodney King. The cockpit of a B-24 bomber punctured by a Japanese anti-aircraft shell during a mission on January 27, 1945. Despite the serious damage, the crew managed to return the aircraft safely to base. A teenager on a rooftop watches the streets of the Bogside neighbourhood, engulfed by riots in Derry, Northern Ireland, 1969. The Molotovs on the wall in front of him speak of being ready for a clash during the Battle for Bogside. Luisa Ciccone, the future Madonna, as a teenager tries to get an autograph from Elvis Presley in 1970. At that time, she had not yet started her musical career. Elvis was at the peak of his popularity, and even such casual shots have become part of pop culture history. Young Leo Tolstoy with his children in Yasnaya Polyana, late 19th century. At this time, the writer was actively engaged in pedagogy and peasant education. He advocated education reform and renounced noble privileges. Space dogs Belka and Strelka after a successful flight, 1960. They became the first animals to return from space alive. The mission was an important step before sending a human into space. The opening of the first sex shop in East Berlin, 1989. The queue formed immediately after the fall of the Berlin Wall. The store has become a symbol of the cultural gap between the two parts of Germany. Tiananmen Square, Beijing, June 4, 1989. Dancing and gathering of students before the deployment of Chinese troops. The event escalated into a tragic crackdown on protests, and the number of victims is still classified. Chinese woman Chen Benhua, a partisan, smiles a moment before being executed by Japanese soldiers, 1938. Her image became a symbol of the resilience and sacrifice of the Chinese resistance in World War II. The picture was published in the Western press as a documentary. David Attenborough shows a cockatoo to Prince Charles and Princess Anne in 1958. This is one of the earliest examples of the popularization of science among the children of the British royal family. Attenborough was a young BBC presenter at the time. A black US soldier reads a note from the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. The inscription is left on the wall in the captured fort. This is part of a psychological war that was waged on a par with the fighting. Teacher John Scopes, Tennessee, 1925. He became involved in a high-profile monkey trial for teaching the theory of evolution. The trial sparked a national debate about science and religion. West German children communicate with East German children through a gap in the Berlin Wall, November 1989. These meetings have become a symbol of the future unification of Germany. The photo was taken immediately after the dismantling of the wall began. In 1862, Katie Williams joined the Northern Army under her male name. She became the first African-American woman to officially serve in the US Army, hiding her identity. The story was revealed only after her demobilization. London, 1928. A rare shot of large-scale flooding after a storm in the North Sea. Thousands of houses were underwater. The authorities have introduced emergency measures to restore urban infrastructure. The barbershop in the USA, 1869, is one of the first documented examples. These establishments served not only as hairdressers, but also as places of social gatherings. The photo captures the beginning of an entire culture that later became global. In 1922, the store owner puts the excess proceeds in a separate drawer. The bills do not fit in the cash register due to hyperinflation. Business in post-war America was trying to cope with the depreciation of money. This photo has become a symbol of the transitional economy and instability. In the 1930s, Kentucky librarians carried books through the mountains on horseback. It was a federal initiative to eliminate illiteracy in remote areas. The work was carried out in any weather, along dangerous trails. Photo of the Godot sisters after a storm in Quebec, 1912. The hurricane destroyed the coast of St. Brice and claimed dozens of lives. The picture has become a symbol of survival and resilience in the northern regions of Canada. In 1942, the United States interned 120,000 people of Japanese descent after the attack on Pearl Harbor. There were thousands of American citizens among them. This decision was made under the pressure of fear and distrust. Pablo Funke is the first black circus owner in British history. He started his career as an artist, but became both a businessman and an innovator. His name was later mentioned in the songs of the Beatles and went down in the history of the British stage. A family in a tent camp in Washington, 1861, is one of the first visual evidence of the humanitarian crisis at the outbreak of the Civil War. Hundreds of refugees sought shelter near the capital. The camp was a temporary solution for those who had lost their homes. In Pennsylvania, in 1900, children sought coal in the Woodward mines. Child labor in the mining industry was common until the early 20th century. The miners received scanty money despite the difficult conditions and danger. A young mother in the Netherlands carries a child in a wooden stroller, 1929. Such constructions were made by hand and were used in villages until the 1950s. The photo shows the standard of living and everyday life of rural residents. This is a rare example of peasant utensils from pre-war Europe. A typewriter showcase in an American department store, late 1950s. These devices were considered advanced technology for office and homework. Cars of different models are presented as a premium product with an emphasis on design and reliability. Buying such equipment in those years was a serious investment in a career and education. Bathtub with an opening side door for the disabled and elderly, Sweden, 1953. The design made it possible to enter the tub without lifting your legs, reducing the risk of falling. It was one of the first solutions for sanitary accessibility at home. The inventor is engineer Per Bergman, who worked to make life easier for people with limited mobility. During a parade in London in 1918, a woman attaches a flower to the uniform of an Indian Sikh soldier. These troops participated in the battles of the First World War on the side of the British Empire and suffered heavy losses. The parade was an act of recognition of their contribution to the war. The picture reflects a rare moment of public gratitude to the colonial units. It is one of the first electric massagers developed at the beginning of the 20th century for the treatment of female hysteria. The device was positioned as a medical instrument and was sold under the guise of a healing device. It was used in clinics and at home, especially until the 1920s. Later, such devices became associated with personal hygiene and were removed from the medical register. Robert Falcon Scott and his team reached the South Pole on January 17, 1912, only to discover the Norwegian flag, a sign that Roald Amundsen was 34 days ahead of them. Exhausted and discouraged, the British begin their journey back. None of them will come back. The picture became a symbol of the tragic heroism of the era of polar expeditions. Athlete Jim Thorpe at the 1912 Summer Olympics. His shoes were stolen before the start, and he went to the competition in 2 different shoes found. One of them is several sizes larger. Despite this, Thorpe won 2 gold medals and became a legend. His story is a symbol of will and perseverance. Farmer's wife and daughter go to church in traditional festive outfits, West Germany, late 19th century. Such headdresses and dresses with ruffles were typical of the regional costume, emphasizing the religiosity and social status of the family. Going to church was an important element of the Sunday ritual. Irish sailor Tom Crean in 1915, a member of 3 Antarctic expeditions, including the Shackleton mission. He survived in extreme conditions, walking hundreds of kilometers on ice without equipment. His endurance and determination made him a legend of polar exploration. Heraldic Knight's Shield, Germany, circa 1470. It is decorated with a coat of arms with a black goat and a female figure, probably an allegorical image or the patron saint of the family. Shields of this type were used in tournaments, and the painting served as a symbol of honor, faith, and protection in battle. Soviet and American soldiers celebrate a historic meeting on the Elbe, April 1945. The Allies came face to face for the first time in the center of defeated Germany. Hugs, an accordion, a front, line uniform. A moment that became a symbol of the final defeat of Nazism and the beginning of the post-war redistribution of the world. The photo shows one of the early humanoid robots, presented to the public in London in 1934. These devices, then called mechanical people, aroused great interest and were associated with futurism and science fiction. The robot was most likely powered by a hidden operator or a primitive mechanism, could perform the simplest movements and pronounce memorized phrases. The photo shows the first United Airlines flight attendants, 1930. This is one of the earliest groups of flight attendants in the history of commercial aviation. In those days, flight attendants were required to have a medical degree. Most of them were nurses, because flying was considered more risky. Their uniforms were strict and modest, with raincoats and hats, and duties included not only passenger service, but also assistance in turbulence and emergency situations. The picture shows showman Phineas Taylor Barnum standing with 3 stars of his circus. General Tom Thumb, Charles Sherwood Stratton, his wife Lavinia Warren, and her brother Commodore Nutt. The photo was taken in the middle of the 19th century, when Barnum's show was gaining huge popularity. Chang Wu-gao, known as the Chinese giant, was one of the tallest people of the 19th century and became a celebrity thanks to his tours of Europe and America. According to contemporaries, his height exceeded 2.5 meters, and his intelligence and knowledge of many languages made him especially popular with the public. In this photo from 1871, he is depicted with his wife and manager during one of the tours. Carrie Nation, a radical member of the temperance movement, gained fame for her raids on salons in Kansas in the early 20th century. Armed with a Bible and an axe, she destroyed bottles of alcohol, believing that she was saving families from destruction. Her actions attracted the attention of the whole country and became a symbol of the fight against drunkenness. The artist Pierre-Auguste Renoir, suffering from severe arthritis, continued to paint despite his crooked fingers and pain. In the picture from around 1910, he is working in the garden of his house in Cagnes-sur-Mer, using a brush strapped to his arm. His perseverance became a symbol of dedication to art for the rest of his life. Haircut Outdoors, California, 1918. Hairdressers in masks serve customers during the Spanish flu pandemic, one of the deadliest viruses of the 20th century. Restrictions even then included distance, masks, and outdoor work. Salvador Dali on a gondola in Venice, 1961. The artist is dressed in an immaculate suit with a cane and hat, posing theatrically against the backdrop of the lagoon. By this time, he was already a global icon of surrealism, known no less for his antics than his paintings. 3 Japanese fashionistas walked through the streets of Tokyo in 1930. Their outfits are a mix of Western fashion and local style: loose trousers, tops, jackets, and wide-brimmed hats. In the era of Taisho and the beginning of sewing, such images symbolize the new women's style of modern Gal, a challenge to traditions and a manifestation of freedom. In 1961, Mattel introduced the first official couple, Barbie and Ken. The photo shows an advertising campaign with the vinyl record Barbie Sings, where the characters sing a duet. These dolls instantly became an icon of pop culture and a symbol of the American dream of the 60s. In 1959, Philips introduced a car turntable that allowed you to listen to vinyl records right behind the wheel. In the photo, a woman inserts a 7-inch disc into a built-in Seeberg 1000 vending machine. The technology quickly became obsolete due to the vibrations of the road, but it became a symbol of the era. In 1936, a French engineer introduced an experimental bicycle with an air propeller, hoping to increase the speed of movement. The device was powered by pedals, transferring the torque to the screw. Despite the boldness of the idea, the project turned out to be unsafe and did not receive distribution. Viking age skates found in York. Made of leather and horsebone, they were used about a millennium ago. Unlike modern models, they did not crash into the ice, but slid along its surface like primitive skis. Such skates were used to move quickly across frozen bodies of water. Adam Rayner is the only documented person who has been recognized as both a dwarf and a giant. At the age of 21, his height was only 118 centimeters, but due to a pituitary tumor, he began to grow dramatically and reached 230 by the age of 51. The disease turned his life into a series of torments. He lost sight in one eye, hearing in one ear, and was almost unable to walk. Face to face for the first time, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, 1980. This clash between the two wrestling legends marked the beginning of one of the most iconic feuds in WWF history. Later, their fight at WrestleMania 3 would set attendance records. Experiment with Cows and Live Music, USA, 1930. A women's orchestra plays music in the cowshed to check if the sound affects the yield. Similar studies have been conducted to find ways to increase livestock productivity without chemical intervention. The talks between North and South Korea, which took place in Panmunjom, in a building specially built on the demarcation line. The table in the room is symbolically divided exactly along the border. One half of it is located in South Korea, the other in North Korea. Representatives of their respective sides are sitting behind each one. A Nazi anthropologist measures an elderly man's nose with a special instrument to determine his racial identity. These pseudo-scientific procedures were actively used in the Third Reich as part of the racial classification underlying anti-Semitic policies. A flathead Indian with his family, circa 1900. The baby is wrapped in a traditional cradle decorated with ornaments. His father's clothes are made of suede and fur, complemented by bone necklaces. The son, wearing a feathered headdress, stands on his right hand. A woman passes a height check using a recruit device, USA, circa 1917. Such meters were used at recruiting stations during the First World War to assess the physical parameters of volunteers. Central London, 1940s. The street is bustling with classic taxi traffic, pedestrians, and double-decker buses. Storefronts and neon signs advertise tobacco products, theatres and shops. A typical atmosphere of post-war Britain recovering from World War II. Dwayne Johnson with his father, wrestler Rocky Johnson, in 1981. The photo captured the future Hollywood star next to one of the first black champions in the history of wrestling. Unusual racing on a motorcycle with a trailer in the form of a chariot, England, 1925. The driver controls the bike and the passenger holds on to the reins, an element of a circus show or an advertising performance of the era. Prototype of a mobile phone, USSR, 1957. The device, weighing about 3 kg, was developed by engineer Leonid Kuprianovich. It worked on radio communications and was one of the first steps towards creating cell phones. Coal gas taxi with a gas generator boat on the roof, Great Britain, 1920. Such vehicles appeared in conditions of fuel shortage and could travel about 24 km using gas produced locally from coal. Cowboys at a camp kitchen in the Wild West, late 19th century. This kitchen is the so-called chuck wagon, invented in 1866 by Charles Goodnight. It served as a mobile canteen for workers at cattle runs, transporting food, dishes, and even a first aid kit. 1898, the gold rush in Alaska. Female prospectors pull heavy sleds through the muddy streets of the Klondike camp, making their way through a crowd of men. In such conditions, they travelled hundreds of miles to survive and find their gold. A 2-level enclosed bed, lit close, has been used in Brittany since the 17th century. This design protected the sleepers from the cold and drafts, and the carved wooden panels provided privacy in crowded houses. Due to the high cost and changing lifestyle by the 20th century, these beds had practically disappeared. In 1947, Bookomat vending machines appeared in the United States, the first vending machines for the sale of pocketbooks. For 25 cents, you could choose from 50 popular paperback novels. This was an attempt to make literature as accessible as possible at train stations, airports, and hotels. A rare Singer-foot sewing machine with a cast base and a folding wooden table, early 20th century. Such devices did not require electricity and were powered by a foot pedal. Ornate models, with decorative inlays and carved ornaments, were intended for home use and were often inherited. In 1922, an experimental motorised baby carriage equipped with a small gasoline engine was introduced in the UK. It reached speeds of up to 24 km/h and was intended for nannies who had to walk a lot with children. Due to the risk of accidents and the high price, such strollers are not widely used. Stefan Bobrowski, also known as Lionel the Lion, suffered from hypertrichosis, a rare condition that causes excessive hair growth throughout his body. Born in Poland in 1890, he became a famous participant in cirques of freaks in Europe and America at the beginning of the 20th century. Ainu with traditional utensils, Japan, 1908. A representative of the indigenous people of northern Japan sits in a wicker hut with household items, wooden dishes, trays, and ritual utensils. The Ainu people kept and passed these things from generation to generation as part of their spiritual and everyday culture. Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight boxing world champion, in a group photo with Finnish wrestlers and police officers. The picture was taken during his visit to Helsinki in 1906. Despite the racial prejudices of the era, Johnson was a recognized authority in the world of sports. The 50 million mark banknote issued in Germany on September 1, 1923, is one of the symbols of the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic. At that time, prices were rising so rapidly that money lost value in just hours. People carried cash in bags, and salaries were paid several times a day. The photo shows 3 graduates of the Pennsylvania Women's Medical College at the end of the 19th century. These women became one of the first officially recognized doctors in their countries: India, Japan, and Syria. Their contribution to medicine and the fight for women's education has become an important milestone in the history of global equality and professional recognition of women. Easter, 1926. A family photo featuring people in homemade rabbit costumes, including an eerily large Easter bunny. Despite the festive atmosphere, the expressions on the children's faces suggest otherwise. The frame has become a classic example of disturbing Easter photos from the past. The Noonan family, Lawrence, Massachusetts, 1920s. The photo shows parents with 13 children, lined up by height. This is one of the typical American working-class families, with many children at the beginning of the 20th century, when large families were the norm, especially in cities with active industrial migration. A 16th century soccer ball found in Scotland. It is hand, sewn from leather, with an inflated pork bladder inside. He was found behind the wall of Stirling Castle, where he was probably stuck after the game. It is one of the oldest preserved balls in the world. The clay benches in the row are an ancient Sumerian school dating back to about 2000 BC, discovered in Iraq on the territory of Nippur. The students sat on the floor, wrote on clay tablets, and memorized Sumerian grammar texts. One of the oldest surviving classrooms in history. Albert Einstein and Charlie Chaplin first met at the premiere of the film in 1931. Einstein expressed his admiration that Chaplin is understood by the whole world, despite the lack of words in his films. In response, Chaplin noted that Einstein is admired even by those who do not understand him at all. This exchange has become a legendary example of the respect between science and art. Freddie Mercury spent the evening in bed, surrounded by his beloved cats. The singer was known for his special affection for animals, and even dedicated the song Delilah to them. The photo was taken in the 1980s at his London home. In 1974, Egypt issued a passport in the name of Pharaoh Rameses II, who died more than 3,000 years ago. This was necessary for the official import of his mummy to France, where the restoration was carried out. The document states profession, king, deceased. The passport did exist and became a unique legal precedent in the history of international transportation of remains. The dog named Stubby was a mascot and a full-fledged member of the 102nd Infantry Regiment of the US Army in the First World War. He became the most decorated dog in history, receiving numerous medals for his service. Stubby discovered the wounded, warned soldiers about gas attacks, and even detained a German spy. His actions saved the lives of an entire company, and after the war, he became a national hero. The astronomical clock in Prague, known as horloge, was installed in 1410 and is still in working order. This is the oldest working astronomical clock in the world. They show not only the time, but also the position of the sun, moon, zodiac signs, and even the phases of the moon. Every hour, the figures on the clock arrange a small performance, attracting many tourists. Finnish soldier Aimo Koivunen fell behind his company in 1944 and found himself alone in the Arctic Circle. Without food, shelter, or enemy territory, he survived only by swallowing the entire supply of methamphetamine intended for the entire group. He trudged through the snow for several weeks, exhausted and frostbitten, but was eventually found and rescued. This case has become one of the most extreme examples of survival at the front. Pawnee women in 1886 process and dry animal skin near temporary dwellings on the plain. Such leatherwork was an important part of everyday life. Clothes, shelters, and utensils were made from the skins. In the foreground, a woman is seen with a scraping tool. This is one of the rare photographic documents of the traditional way of life of the indigenous peoples of the United States at the end of the 19th century. A firefighter carries Torah scrolls from a burning synagogue in the 1940s. The Torah is the main sacred text of Judaism. The picture symbolizes respect for faith and the preservation of shrines even in critical conditions. The study of Nicholas II in the Winter Palace after the pogrom by the revolutionaries 1917. The lavish decorations were looted, papers and art objects scattered. This picture became a symbol of the collapse of the empire and the end of the Romanov dynasty. School Halloween in 1939. Dozens of children in costumes, many in creepy homemade masks. The atmosphere is more like a horror than a holiday. A family of sharecropper farmers is trying to keep warm at a makeshift stove in a temporary accommodation camp. Missouri, USA, 1939, the height of the Great Depression. The last portrait of Geronimo, the legendary Apache chief. He died in 1909 of pneumonia after falling into icy water while driving home drunk. The wedding dress is made from a silk parachute that saved the groom's life in the war. He used it when jumping during World War II, and the bride turned it into a symbol of their new life. The O'Halloran sisters became famous in 1889 when they fought off British officials who tried to evict them. They used boiling water and batons to defend their home during the Irish Land War. French and British workers first met while drilling the Eurotunnel under the English Channel, 1990. This historical moment symbolized the connection of the two countries through an underground road more than 50 km long. Two images of the same place in the Arctic, taken with an interval of 105 years, show a sharp retreat of the glacier. The upper photo is the beginning of the XX century. The lower one is modernity. This is clear evidence of global warming. A rare photo of Hachiko the dog with his master, Professor Ueno Hidesaburo. Hachiko became a symbol of devotion after waiting for him at the train station for 9 years after the professor's death. The picture was taken before 1925. The Guagua Pichincha volcano eruption, October 1999, Quito, Ecuador. The huge ash explosion, which took the form of a nuclear mushroom, became the most powerful since 1660. Despite the spectacular nature, the main areas of the city escaped catastrophic destruction. May Day March of supporters of communism in New York, 1935. Marches carry portraits of Lenin and Stalin with the words, "Our leader," reflecting the influence of leftist movements in the United States during the Great Depression. Such demonstrations caused mixed reactions in society and were actively monitored by the security services. A rare shot of Charlie Chaplin out of character, 1919. Instead of the tramp's signature costume, he wears a strict classic suit. The photo was taken at a time when Chaplin had already become a global star and founded his own film studio. Balloon Festival in Leningrad, 1990. Thousands of spectators gathered on the spit of Vasilyevsky Island, and balloons with logos of world brands filled the sky. In the background is the cruiser Aurora, a symbol of the revolution. The event became one of the iconic moments of the end of the Soviet era. The earliest known manufactured mirrors, about 8,000 years old, were found in the town of Çatalhöyük in Turkey. The Maya Codex, also known as the Venus Codex or the Grolier Codex, is one of the few surviving manuscripts of the Maya civilization. Created between 1021 and 1154 AD, this manuscript is recorded on a matla, a paper made of tree bark. Its pages depict rituals, deities, and astronomical observations in detail, particularly the cycles of Venus, which the Maya considered important in religion and military strategy. Hanako is a koi carp that has lived a record 226 years. Its age was determined in 1966 by analysing the rings on the scales, similar to determining the age of trees. According to these data, Hanako was born in 1751 during the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan and died on July 7, 1977. This fish is considered one of the longest-lived known vertebrates on the planet. The image shows a rare example of women's self. Defence gloves dating from about 1850 London. Such gloves were made of thick leather and equipped with sharp metal claws or spikes on the fingers. In an era when women did not have the right to carry weapons, such accessories became a hidden but effective way to protect themselves in dangerous areas of the city. A high-rise installer applies paint to the steel structures of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, 1971. This worker is Paul Hogan, who would later become a famous actor who starred in the movie Crocodile Dundee. Before his film career, he actually worked on the construction and maintenance of the bridge. In 2010, a family from Shropshire, England, accidentally discovered a hidden ancient chapel under the floor of their house. The secret entrance was located directly under the carpet in the corridor and led to an underground room with arch vaults and stone trim. Presumably, this place was used for secret religious gatherings during the persecution. The architecture and remains of objects indicate its considerable age and historical value. This is a section of the Great Wall of China called Laolontu, translated as the head of the old dragon, located in the city of Shanhaiguan, where the wall literally goes into the Bohai Sea. Built in the 15th century, this site served as a strategic defence point and is considered one of the most picturesque ends of the wall. A single spear pierced through bone is a rare archaeological artefact that vividly illustrates the brutality and physical proximity of battles during the Roman Gallic Wars around the 1st century BC. The metal tip remained stuck in the bone of the victim, probably a soldier or warrior who died in battle. This historical photo captures the moment of preparation for Audrey Hepburn's theatrical debut in the production of Gigi on Broadway in 1951. At that time, a little-known actress personally helped design the play poster at the entrance to the Fulton Theatre, where her star breakthrough took place. The performance became a key turning point in her career, marking the beginning of a dizzying rise to world fame. The picture shows the historical moment of the presentation of the Medal of Honor of the US Congress to astronaut Neil Armstrong in 1978. This award was a recognition not only of his legendary walk on the moon in 1969, but also of his contribution to the development of the space program. The ceremony was held in the presence of President Jimmy Carter and Armstrong's colleagues on the Apollo 11 mission. An American soldier feeds Japanese children during the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. Despite the fierce fighting, many military personnel showed sympathy for the civilian population. This frame has become a symbol of humanity against the backdrop of one of the bloodiest battles of the Second World War. Frederick Douglass, an outstanding abolitionist and speaker, poses with his grandson Joseph Douglass, the first black violinist to perform on the US national stage. The photo from 1894 symbolizes the transition from slavery to art and freedom in one generation. At the unveiling of the Lincoln Memorial in 1922, 78-year-old Robert T. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's only surviving son, is supported by soldiers as they climb the steps. This moment has become a living symbol of the continuity of the memory of the 16th President of the United States. Ceramic pipes discovered near the Epang Palace in China date back to the 5th-3rd centuries BC. They were used for water supply demonstrating the high level of engineering in ancient China long before the advent of modern sewage systems. The building of the imperial castle in Poznan after the destruction of the Second World War and after decades of restoration. The top photo shows the year 1946, the aftermath of the battles for the city, the facade in ruins. In Nizhny Novgorod, 2021, the restored building again serves administrative and cultural purposes. Soldiers on an armoured car patrol the area next to an oil depot on fire during the disaster in Texas City, April 17, 1947. The explosion of a cargo ship carrying ammonium nitrate has become one of the most devastating industrial incidents in the history of the United States. A set of medieval tools from Gotland, discovered in a wooden chest, estimated to be about 1,000 years old. It includes a variety of iron products, hammers, chisels, knives, locks and lattices, which indicates the professional activity of the owner, probably a blacksmith or craftsman. An experimental rubber mask with built-in heating elements designed to smooth out wrinkles using heat. The 1939 device is an example of an early and questionable cosmetic technology in the history of skincare. July 6, 1944. Famous clown Emmett Kelly, in the guise of Sad Willie without makeup, helps extinguish a fire during the tragedy at the Hartford Circus, Connecticut. The disaster claimed the lives of 167 people and became one of the deadliest in the history of American circuses. 1955. Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald at the Mocambo Club in Hollywood. Thanks to Monroe's personal support, Fitzgerald, despite racial discrimination, was given the opportunity to perform on one of the most prestigious stages of the time. The USS Galena is one of the first battleships in the history of the United States Navy, launched in 1862 during the Civil War. Its wooden body was covered with iron plates, but the protection proved insufficient. In the Battle of Drury Bluff, enemy shells penetrated the armor more than 40 times. This experience has shown that the future belongs to all metal ships. July 16, 1969, the morning of the Apollo 11 launch. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins and Buzz Aldrin have breakfast with NASA staff before the historic flight to the moon. The menu included steak, eggs, toast and coffee, a high-calorie and proven diet for astronauts at launch. Marie-Helene de Rothschild and Baron Guy de Rothschild at the famous 1972 costume ball hosted at their Château de Ferrières mansion in France. The event was widely publicized due to the surreal costumes and mysterious atmosphere, giving rise to many rumors and theories. A rescue team lifts the damaged command module of the Apollo 13 mission on board after flooding in the Pacific Ocean. An emergency during the flight made this mission one of the most dramatic in the history of space exploration. Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash together at a backstage meeting in Memphis, 1957. Both musicians were stars of the Sun Records label and played a key role in shaping rock and roll and country music. Canadian military personnel line up for a friendly hockey match on the frozen Imjin River in South Korea, 1951. The picture was taken during the Korean War, when soldiers were playing games to maintain morale. The Roman multifunctional instrument, dating back to about the 2nd century AD, combines a spoon, a knife, a hairpin, a fork, and a toothpick. This artifact is considered the prototype of the modern Swiss knife and testifies to the high level of engineering thought of ancient Rome. Writer George Orwell feeds a goat named Muriel on his farm. Later, he uses her as a character in the satirical novel Animal Farm, where she symbolizes literate but passive witnesses to the regime. The year is 1977. Gene Simmons, bass guitarist and frontman of the band Kiss, poses backstage with his mother, Flora Klein. Despite his stage persona as a demon, Simmons has always respected his mother, who survived the Holocaust and played an important role in his upbringing. The Snecma C-450 Coléoptère is an experimental French vertical takeoff and landing (VTOL) aircraft built in 1958. Its unique design included an annular wing and a vertical fuselage resembling an insect, for which it received the nickname Beetle. The project turned out to be too difficult to manage, and after the disaster of the first prototype, the program was closed. This is a leather shoe with silk trim that belonged to Marie Antoinette. According to legend, it was in it that she went to the guillotine in October 1793. The shoes reflect the fashion of the late 18th century and are kept as historical relics of the French Revolution. Hanja no Ontachi is a giant Japanese sword from the Edo period, 1603–1867, made not for combat, but as a ritual weapon for temples. Such swords symbolized protection from evil and demons and were often presented to the gods in Shinto shrines. The luxurious miniature mouse house was made in China during the Qing dynasty in the 19th century. Such structures were created to house tamed mice and reflected the aesthetics of the traditional Chinese architectural style. The man-catcher, used in Germany between 1601 and 1800, was a metal device with sharp spikes mounted on a long handle. It was intended to capture and immobilize a person without causing him fatal wounds. Trapped inside a metal ring with spikes, he could not move, because any effort led to pain. A 1905 colour photograph captures the waterfront of Luna Park on Coney Island in New York, one of the first and most famous amusement parks in the world. The architecture in the style of a fairy tale castle, crowds of citizens in fancy clothes, and a procession of elephants create an atmosphere of solemn celebration. At that time, the park was considered a symbol of progress and mass leisure for all segments of society. An August 1939 photo shows a farming family near Muskogee, Oklahoma, in the midst of a devastating drought. A man with reins, a woman with an umbrella, and children on a cart symbolize the plight of American families during the Dust Bowl, an environmental disaster that struck agriculture in the central United States in the 1930s. The photo shows the oldest preserved plough in the world, estimated to be 4,000 years old. It is carved from oak and was discovered near Lake Garda in Italy. Below is a reconstruction of its use involving harnessed oxen and a ploughman, which gives an idea of the agricultural technologies of the Bronze Age. A picture taken in 1974 by photographer Daniel Soren in New York's Central Park shows two mimes. 35 years later, Soren discovered that one of them was a young Robin Williams, who was not yet known to the general public at that time. The artist poses next to the original painting that became the basis for the Paramount Pictures logo. This image was created in 1965 and subsequently adapted into the iconic logo of the film studio, recognizable by the silhouette of the mountain and the stars surrounding the peak. These Inuit glasses, carved from walrus bone, were an early protection against snow blindness. The narrow slits limited the amount of light entering the eyes, which is especially important in the Arctic, where the sun's rays reflect off snow and ice, creating a dangerous level of glare. Patty McGee became the first woman officially recognized as a professional skateboarder. In 1965, she signed a contract with a skateboard manufacturer and began demonstration tours of the United States, appearing on television and popularizing the new sport among young people. On the set of Star Wars in 1977, the cast and crew relaxed between takes. In the center of the frame is Kenny Baker, who played the role of R2-D2, having a snack without leaving his costume. The scene was shot in Tunisia, where the scenes of the planet Tatooine were filmed. John F. Kennedy is sitting at a tea table with his daughter Caroline circa 1960. The scene captures a rare moment of family comfort for the future President of the United States before the start of his presidential campaign. Arnold Schwarzenegger is engaged in ballet under the guidance of a professional ballerina. These shots were taken in 1976 during Arnold's preparation for the Mr. Olympia competition. He trained in ballet technique to improve the grace and expressiveness of posing on stage. A chain of preserved human and animal footprints was found in the area of the Avellino volcano eruption, which occurred about 2,000 years ago, several decades before the death of Pompeii. These footprints were left during the stampede from the erupting volcano and then solidified in ash and volcanic soil. They provide unique evidence of human presence and response to a natural disaster during the Bronze Age. Here are the Venetian Chopin shoes used by women from the 15th to the 18th century. These platform shoes reached extreme heights and served to protect against street dirt, as well as a status symbol. Sometimes their height reached up to half a metre, which is why the ladies needed to be accompanied when walking. The photo shows school pictures of the actors from the TV series Friends, taken long before their worldwide fame. In the top row, Matthew Perry, Chandler, Jennifer Aniston, Rachel, Matt LeBlanc, Joey. In the bottom, Courtney Cox, Monica, David Schwimmer, Ross, Lisa Kudrow, Phoebe. One of the first recorded cases of friendship between a Native American and a tamed wolf. Despite widespread myths, Indigenous peoples often perceived wolves as spiritual companions rather than a threat. If you like the content at least a little, subscribe to the channel, like it and, most importantly, write your opinion in the comments. I will be very happy about it, my friend.